Welcome back to our channel. The favor my best friend asked for was supposed to last 48 hours. Pretend to be her boyfriend for one weekend at her family reunion, smile in some photos, eat too much potato salad, and go home. Nobody mentioned that by Sunday night her mother would already be asking which church we wanted, and I'd be too busy falling in love to correct her. My name is Jake Sullivan. I'm 30, I fix HVAC systems for a living, and until that weekend I would have told you the most dangerous thing in my life was a cracked compressor line. I was wrong. The most dangerous thing in my life turned out to be Chloe Bennett in a sundress, holding my hand in front of 40 relatives and calling me honey like she'd been practicing. Chloe and I had been best friends since we were 19. We met in a community college study group for a statistics class. Neither of us passed the first time, bonded over bad vending machine coffee, and somehow just never stopped talking after that. 10 years, 2 apartments each, 3 bad breakups apiece, and one unspoken rule that we never examined too closely: we didn't do romance with each other. We did everything else. Grocery runs, moving days, emergency room visits, terrible Tinder debriefs at 1 a.m. Just not that. So when she called me on a Wednesday night sounding like she was chewing on a live wire, I figured someone had died or her car had, again. "I need a favor," she said. "A big one. Possibly insane." Define insane. My cousin's wedding is this weekend. Full family reunion energy. Aunts, uncles, my grandmother, everyone. And my mother has spent 6 months telling the entire family I'm dating someone stable and wonderful because she got tired of explaining why I'm single. I sat up straighter. "You made up a boyfriend." "I made up a boyfriend 8 months ago to get her off my back for one Thanksgiving. I did not think it through. Now she's expecting to meet him. This weekend. At the reunion. In front of everyone. Chloe. I know. That's not a favor, that's a hostage situation. Jake, please. It's 2 days. You already know everyone's names because I've complained about them for a decade. You just have to hold my hand, be charming, and not mention that this started as a lie to survive a turkey dinner." I should have said no. Any reasonable man with self-preservation instincts would have said no. Instead I heard myself say, "What's the dress code?" which in hindsight was basically a yes with extra steps. Business casual with a chance of my Aunt Rosalind asking invasive questions about your income. Perfect. I love being interrogated by strangers for free. You're the best. I owe you forever. You already owe me for the couch I helped you carry up 3 flights of stairs. This is going on the tab. She laughed, and something about the sound of it stuck with me longer than it should have. I told myself it was nothing. I'd heard Chloe laugh 1,000 times. I ignored the small, stubborn voice reminding me that lately it had started landing somewhere different in my chest. The reunion was 2 hours outside the city at her uncle's property, the kind of sprawling backyard with string lights and a rented tent that made it look like the family had either a wedding or a very organized intervention planned. Chloe picked me up Saturday morning wearing a pale yellow dress, her hair down for once instead of the messy bun she wore to basically every other event in her life. I opened my mouth to say something normal, like "you look nice," and instead just stood there on my porch holding my overnight bag like a man who'd forgotten how words worked. "You're staring," she said. "You're wearing a dress. It's disorienting." I own dresses, Jake. I've seen maybe 2 of them and one was for a funeral. She rolled her eyes, but she was smiling when she did it. "Get in the car, boyfriend." The word landed strange between us. Not bad, strange. Just new. I climbed in anyway. On the drive, she ran through the ground rules like a general briefing troops before a mission. We'd met at a mutual friend's barbecue 8 months ago. I worked in HVAC, which was true, so we wouldn't have to fabricate too much. We'd been dating quietly because Chloe hated making a big deal out of new relationships. If anyone asked why they hadn't heard about me before, that was the excuse. Sounds solid, I said. What about physical stuff? Hand-holding, arm around the shoulder, general boyfriend choreography? Chloe's hands tightened slightly on the wheel. Whatever feels natural. Nothing weird. Define weird. Don't kiss my grandmother's hand like a Victorian gentleman again. That traumatized her last time you visited. That was one time and she loved it. She still asks if you're single every Christmas. She has excellent instincts. Chloe glanced at me, quick and unreadable, then looked back at the road. Just be you, she said, softer now. Everyone already likes you. That's not the hard part. What's the hard part? She didn't answer right away. Making it look like something it's not, she finally said, eyes fixed straight ahead. I let that sit in the car with us for the rest of the drive, not sure why it felt heavier than it should have. Her uncle's property smelled like cut grass and barbecue smoke, and the second we stepped out of the car, a small woman in a floral blouse spotted us from the porch and let out a sound somewhere between a gasp and a war cry. There she is. And this must be him. That was Chloe's mother, Deborah Bennett, a woman who hugged like she was trying to reset your spine. She pulled me in before I could introduce myself properly, and over her shoulder I caught Chloe mouthing "I'm sorry" like a woman watching a controlled demolition. Jake, Deborah said, holding my face in both hands like she was checking for authenticity. Chloe has told us so little about you, which I've decided means you're either a serial killer or extremely humble. I'm going to go with humble. That's exactly what a humble man would say. She turned to Chloe. He's handsome. Good posture. Firm handshake. Mom. I'm gathering data. For the first hour, I met more relatives than I could reasonably track. Uncles who wanted to talk about my truck. Cousins who wanted to know if I'd ever considered getting into real estate instead of pipes, which I decided not to take personally. Chloe stayed close the entire time, her hand finding mine in a way that started as performance and slowly, without either of us mentioning it, stopped feeling like performance at all. You're doing great, she whispered at one point, leaning into my shoulder while her Uncle Marv explained a fantasy football trade in aggressive detail. I'm surviving, I whispered back. Your Aunt Rosalind already asked about my credit score. She does that to everyone. Consider it hazing. Did I pass? You're still standing. That's a pass. Dinner happened under the string lights, long tables pushed together, more food than any reasonable gathering required. Deborah sat directly across from us, watching me with the focused attention of a woman building a case file. So, Jake, she said, halfway through the meal. Where do you see this going? Chloe nearly choked on her lemonade. Mom. What? It's a fair question. You're 30. Chloe's 29. The clock isn't cruel, but it isn't patient either. I felt Chloe's hand tighten around mine under the table, a silent plea. I looked at Deborah, and something in me, maybe the 2 glasses of wine, maybe the string lights, maybe just wanting to protect Chloe from an interrogation she didn't sign up for, made me lean into it instead of dodging. Honestly, I said, I see it going somewhere real. Chloe's the kind of person who makes ordinary days feel worth showing up for. I'm not in a rush, but I'm not going anywhere either. The table went quiet in that specific way tables go quiet when something true accidentally slips out in the middle of a lie. Chloe turned to look at me, and for a second her expression wasn't performance anymore. It was something rawer, something that made my pulse do something embarrassing. "That's a beautiful answer," Deborah said, dabbing at her eye with a napkin like I'd just delivered a wedding toast. "Absolutely beautiful." Under the table, Chloe's fingers laced properly through mine for the first time all day. Not for show. Just holding on. After dinner, while the older relatives cleared plates and the younger cousins lit up a fire pit, Chloe pulled me toward the edge of the yard, away from earshot. "That answer," she said. "About us going somewhere real. Too much?" "No. That's the problem. It wasn't too much. My mother is planning a save-the-date in her head right now, Jake. I got carried away. I'm sorry." She looked at me for a long moment, arms crossed loosely, the firelight catching the side of her face. "Were you carried away?" I should have said yes. Should have laughed it off, blamed the wine, called it good improv. Instead I found myself saying, "I don't know. Maybe not as much as I should have been." Chloe went very still. "What does that mean?" "It means for a second in there, I wasn't performing anything. My heart was going too fast for a man just standing in a backyard. It means I've spent 10 years being your best friend and telling myself that was enough, and today it stopped feeling like enough." The fire pit crackled somewhere behind us. Chloe's mouth parted slightly, like she wanted to say something clever and couldn't locate it. "Jake. You don't have to say anything back," I said quickly. "I know this weekend has one job, and it's not this. I just didn't want to keep lying to you on top of lying to everyone else." She stepped closer instead of stepping back, which I decided to take as a good sign. "I asked you to do this because you were the only person I trusted enough to fake something with," she said quietly. "I told myself that was because we're close. I didn't let myself think about why holding your hand today felt like the least fake part of the whole weekend. My chest did something complicated. Chloe. I've spent 10 years telling myself best friend was the safest label for this," she said, voice barely above the fire's crackle. Today it stopped feeling safe. It just felt true. Neither of us moved for a second. Then she closed the distance and kissed me, soft and a little uncertain, like she was testing whether the ground would hold. It held. I kissed her back, one hand finding her waist, and the whole ridiculous weekend, the fake boyfriend story, her mother's interrogation, Uncle Marv's fantasy football monologue, fell away into something that finally felt uncomplicated. When we pulled back, she let out a shaky laugh. This was supposed to be fake. I got confused about the assignment. Badly. Catastrophically. She rested her forehead against mine. What do we tell my mother? That the boyfriend's real now. Effective immediately. Chloe laughed again, brighter this time, and the sound landed exactly where I'd suspected it would for weeks, right in the center of my chest, permanently. We didn't announce anything that night. We just walked back toward the fire pit hand in hand, and if anyone noticed the shift, they were polite enough not to say so out loud. Deborah, however, was not built for subtlety. "You two look different," she said the moment we sat back down. "Glowier." "It's the firelight, Mom." "It's something," Deborah said, eyes narrowing with maternal suspicion. "I've raised you for 29 years, Chloe Elizabeth. I know glowier when I see it. Chloe squeezed my hand under the table and said nothing, which her mother apparently interpreted as full confirmation, because by the time dessert came out, Deborah was already deep in conversation with her sister about venue availability for next spring, just in case. "Mom," Chloe said, mortified. "We've been official for approximately 11 minutes. I like to plan ahead." "There is no ahead yet." "There will be," Deborah said serenely, cutting into her pie like a woman with insider information. "I've seen the way he looks at you. That's not 11-minute energy." I decided not to argue, mostly because she wasn't wrong. We drove home Sunday evening with the windows cracked and the radio low, both of us still a little stunned by how quickly the ground had shifted under a friendship we'd spent a decade calling settled. Somewhere around the halfway point, Chloe reached over and laced her fingers through mine on the console, no audience left to perform for. "So," she said, "we're really doing this. Looks that way. I need you to know something before we get too far into it. Okay. If this doesn't work, I lose my best friend and my boyfriend in the same breakup. That terrifies me." I brought her hand up and kissed her knuckles, careful and slow. "Then we don't let it not work. That's not really something you can promise." "No," I admitted. "But I can promise I'm not treating this like the version of us that was safe to lose. I've had 10 years of practice not losing you. I'm not about to get lazy now." She was quiet for a moment, watching the streetlight slide past the window. "My mother's already texting my aunts about colors," she said eventually. "I think we accidentally got engaged to a seating chart. Occupational hazard of dating you, apparently. You're taking this remarkably well for a man who agreed to a 2-day favor and is now facing a hypothetical wedding. I've always been an overachiever." She laughed, leaning her head against my shoulder at the next red light, and I thought, not for the first time that weekend, that I could get used to this particular kind of chaos. The weeks after the reunion moved fast in the way real things do once you stop pretending they aren't real. We didn't rush into labels beyond what we already had, mostly because the labels had arrived faster than either of us expected and we were both still catching up. But the shift was obvious in 100 small ways. She started leaving a toothbrush at my place. I started keeping the good coffee, the kind she liked, instead of the cheap stuff I used to drink alone. We stopped pretending the hand-holding was for show. Deborah, for her part, treated the whole thing as a personal triumph, which was both exhausting and, if I'm honest, a little bit sweet. She called Chloe twice a week with updates on venues she hadn't been asked to research, sent me a text out of nowhere asking my ring size for a friend, and once mailed us a magazine clipping about honeymoon destinations with a sticky note that said, "No pressure, just planting seeds." "She's unstoppable," Chloe said one night, scrolling through another message from her mother about floral arrangements. "I love her, but she has zero respect for pacing." To be fair, she wasn't wrong about the glowier thing. That's not the point. It's a little bit the point. Chloe threw a pillow at me, which I considered a win. 3 months in, her mother invited us both to Sunday dinner, ostensibly just a normal family meal. It was not a normal family meal. It involved Deborah's sister, 3 cousins, a photo album from Chloe's childhood conveniently left open on the coffee table, and a very pointed conversation about how her grandmother wasn't getting any younger and would like to see a wedding while she still has her hearing for the vows. "Mom," Chloe said, exasperated, "we've been together for 3 months. Your father proposed to me after 2. That's not the flex you think it is. We're still married 31 years later. That's luck, not a strategy." Deborah just smiled serenely and passed the mashed potatoes, the picture of a woman who had already decided how this was going to go and was simply waiting for the rest of us to catch up. 6 months in, I took Chloe to the same backyard where it all started. Her uncle had let us use it for a small dinner, no reunion crowd, just us and a borrowed set of string lights I'd put up myself that afternoon, badly, with several minor electrical injuries. She laughed when she saw the lights sagging in the middle. "Did you rewire my uncle's yard?" "I fixed HVAC systems, not lighting." "I did my best." "It's crooked." "It's charming." "It's a hazard." "Sit down before I change my mind about this speech I've been rehearsing." She sat, still laughing, and I got down on one knee before the joke could finish landing, which shut her up faster than anything I'd ever said in 10 years of friendship. "Jake, you asked me to be your boyfriend for one weekend," I said, pulling the ring from my jacket pocket with hands that were shaking more than I wanted to admit. "I was supposed to give it back Sunday night. I never gave it back. I don't want to. I want to keep being the man who holds your hand at family dinners, gets interrogated by your Aunt Rosalind, survives your mother's wedding color spreadsheets, and comes home to you every single day after that. Marry me, Chloe." She had both hands pressed over her mouth, eyes bright in the string light glow. "You planned this in the exact yard where you accidentally fell for me. Felt appropriate. This is either the most romantic or the most chaotic thing you've ever done. Can it be both?" "Yes," she said, laughing through tears now. "Yes, it's both, and yes, I'll marry you." I slid the ring on with hands that still hadn't fully steadied, and when I stood up to kiss her, the crooked string lights flickered once overhead like they'd been waiting for the cue. Deborah, it turned out, had been watching from the kitchen window the entire time, and the second we walked inside she was already crying, already hugging us both at once, already saying something about finally having a date to put on the calendar for real. "I told everyone," she said, wiping her eyes. "I told them the first night, at the reunion. I said, that boy is not going anywhere." "You didn't tell us that," Chloe said. "I didn't need to. Mothers know." We got married the following spring, in that same backyard, under lights that were, this time, professionally installed and perfectly straight. Her grandmother made it, hearing intact, and cried through the entire ceremony in the front row. Uncle Marv gave a toast that somehow involved both fantasy football and a genuinely moving story about Chloe as a kid, which nobody expected from him and everybody appreciated anyway. When people ask us now how we got together, Chloe usually starts with, "He agreed to be my fake boyfriend for one weekend," and I finish with, "and then I forgot how to stop." Because that's the truth of it. What started as a favor to get her mother off her back turned into the realest thing either of us had ever built, one crooked string of lights and one accidental confession at a time. 10 years of friendship had quietly been building towards something neither of us let ourselves name, and it took one fake weekend, one overprotective mother, and one too honest answer at a dinner table to finally drag it into the light. Deborah still brings up, at every family gathering, that she knew before we did. She's probably right. Mothers usually are. What would you have done if your best friend asked you to fake date them for one weekend, and their family started planning your wedding before you'd even figured out your own feelings? And have you ever had a lie accidentally turn into the realest relationship of your life? Tell me your story in the comments. If you liked this one, leave a like, subscribe.